And
Oh
but
my
the
God.
important thing to say, and I can see why people say that, is because when you say our government wouldn't do that to us, a lot of people are thinking about their mayors, their district council members, their congress members,
Right.
people that they know. Maybe they
Right.
got an auntie and uncle running.
Right.
We're not talking about our government in that sense. We're
No.
talking about the upper echelon, the government that you don't necessarily vote on, people you don't see. We're talking about criminal elements
The,
within the military
right.
industrial complex,
The
within the
deep
lobbying
state.
deep state. This is what we're talking about. So
Right. And they
you'd be
make their
surprised.
money. They make their money smuggling drugs. That's what the Iran-Contra
Man,
issue was.
people.
The,
Yep.
the CIA was smuggling tons of cocaine
Yep.
into Mena, Arkansas,
Yep.
while Bill Clinton was governor. How do
Right.
you think? How do you think the governor of the poorest state in the country all of a sudden became president? Because
Say it.
he let them use his airport. So George
Yep.
Bush Sr. was flying 3.1 tons per plane load, and the planes were coming every day.
Right. And people say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist." Yo, there's no bigger conspiracy than something like that, right? That is documented fact. You can even watch part of
Documented fact.
Oliver. You can watch part of Oliver North's testimony on that, guys.
Yep.
And so these things happen.
On
Are
C-SPAN.
on C-SPAN. So
Bitches!
I think all that stuff's really important factor. And then when
It
people
is.
start to, and then we're not bringing it up on this show, but when it comes down to COVID and the vaccine, this is why people, it's safe and it's okay to ask certain questions. You don't want to go on these crazy conspiracy theory rants. Like, you don't want to say ridiculous shit. But at the same time, it's not, you're not crazy or stupid for at least pondering and thinking through these things while looking at the history of things to see what the corporate the corporate plutocracy is capable of, using our government almost as a front organization to have access to us the people. And
Right.
again, last thing I'll say is, when you look at J.P. Morgan and how his family came over from
Oh, don't
Europe
even.
to America, and he so-called saved the American economy and started one of the biggest monopolies ever. This is how they, anybody who thinks America is a great, well-wishing, good-willed country that tried to do something new with democracy and liberty, you may absolutely be right. But you have to see that the elite people who've had a stranglehold in Europe all the way since the times of Rome, these families came over here and said, "Fuck that, we're getting a hold of this." And J.P. Morgan, if you just follow his story, is a great example of how they can do that and how we let them do
Right.
that, because they have industry and industrial and monetary wealth that America
Right.
needed at the time. They pretty much bought us out.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe you just mentioned J.P. Morgan. Oh my God, dude. So J.P. Morgan is evil. Pure
Mm.
evil. It's a great example of capitalism run
Mm.
run amok. And
Yep.
my favorite analogy has always been capitalism is a dog chasing its tail, and that dog has a really long tail, so it's going
Mm.
to be eating its tail. And now that dog
Mm.
starts eating itself. How much of itself is that dog going to eat? Right?
Mm.
Um, or you can look at like a building, right? Like people talk about a glass ceiling in a career, right?
Mm-hmm.
But look at capitalism. There's a glass ceiling, right? Once you're paying a kid 5 cents in fucking Sri Lanka,
Oh shit.
where are you going to find a kid for 4 cents an hour, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And once you find that kid, where are you going to find them for 3 cents an hour, right? Because that's capitalism. You got to do better every quarter,
Yep.
not just every year, every quarter. It's got to be every quarter.
Right.
That's
Right.
not real. We live on a planet with finite resources.
Right.
It's
Eh,
not possible to
It's
grow
not.
exponentially ad infinitum.
Period.
You're going to hit that quote unquote glass ceiling. And that brings me to JP Morgan. So
Mm.
this bastard, right? You know Nikola Tesla, right?
Yeah. Oh God. Go in there.
So
Get it.
Nikola Tesla invented this thing called Wardenfeld. He
The
discovered
Wardenclyffe.
how to
Mm-hmm.
Wardenclyffe,
Perpetual
thank you.
energy. Yeah.
He discovered how to suck energy from the stratosphere and then distribute it and like wirelessly
Right.
transmit it around the earth. And he demonstrated it and it worked. And he showed it to JP Morgan and JP Morgan said, "Well, where do I put the meter?" Like,
Hmm.
how do I charge people?
Right.
And Tesla said, well, that's the whole point. It's free. Everybody
Free
has free
energy.
energy. JP Morgan brought in bulldozers and destroyed it. And then not long after that, Tesla's lab caught on fire, and like 220 something of his patents went up in flames.
And not to mention that J.P. Morgan was funding him, and as soon as he refused
Right.
those meters, the funding
Yep.
stopped. And
Right.
and of course, not only his intellectual property was destroyed, but Tesla went
And he
from one of the
died.
most.
Yeah.
He died an old man alone in his home, still
In
working
a
on his
hotel
things
room.
in a hotel room.
In a
And not to
hotel
mention,
room, dude.
as soon as he died, the FBI with their star runner guy when he was young. Um, why am I forgetting his name now? What's his name? FBI
Edison.
guy. No, no, no. FBI
No.
guy, cross dressing.
Shit.
J. Edgar
Um,
Hoover. J.
yes.
Edgar Hoover himself broke into that apartment and they took all of his patents, all of his ideas, all of his things. This is what happens when you refuse somebody like J.P. Morgan. So you know where his mind is at, you know? I'm so glad you brought that
Absolutely.
out about Nikola Tesla.
By any means necessary. And
Oh,
then that
and
leads.
sorry, I was
Go.
just going to say real quick
Go.
is when we're talking about education reform and how we're taught, dude, we're not taught about Nikola Tesla. He's mentioned sometimes barely. All we're taught about is Edison. Edison, Edison,
Yeah.
Edison, Edison, Edison. So that just shows you
Edison
how
wasn't
powerful
shit.
these guys are. Edison was not shit. He was more of a marketer and a businessman than an inventor.
Yeah. He was a
And most
middleman.
he was a middleman, and most of his ideas weren't original. You know what I mean?
Oh, no,
And
and
he
he was
hated
hell bent.
Tesla.
He
Yeah.
was hell bent on DC power.
Yep.
And do
Instead
you
of
know what he
alternating
did?
current. Mm.
Instead of alternating current, which is what we use today,
Didn't he shock a
Edison,
shitload of horses and kill them?
yes, in front of people
Oh
to
shit.
scare them.
Oh,
He's an
shit.
evil bastard.
These are
What
our
an evil
American.
bastard.
These are the heroes in the textbooks in our schools, my man.
Yep.
Edison, Christopher Columbus. These are our heroes, bro. War, genocidal
Christopher
maniacs,
Columbus is a
rapists,
genocidal maniac.
and
And he was
rapists,
fucking lost. He
and
was
he was a
lost.
pedophile, and he was lost.
He's a shitty
Um,
sailor, right? Thought he was in India,
thought he was in
right? Which is
India.
which is why he called them Indians. Like, what a
Right.
fucking idiot. No, dude, you're on the other side of the fucking world.
And while we're on the topic, we're also talking about, like, for example, in education reform, we're talking about things like re-education camps for the Native Americans and Indigenous, where not
Oh,
their slogan was "Kill the Indian, save the man," and they wanted to
yep.
Americanize these guys. And again, we talked about earlier in this talk. Go ahead and check it out. We talked about the oral traditions that. Had so much hidden knowledge and hidden history that people refused to see in the modern world that was later discovered to be true that we were taught was bullshit. And in order to wipe these things out and make sure that these traditions died, they had these schools for Indian boys and girls, and then they turned into these boarding
Boarding
homes,
schools,
boarding schools.
right? So
Exactly.
they
It,
stripped them from their families,
yeah,
mandatory. Just
yeah,
basically showed up, took your kids,
right.
and put them in a fucking school where I don't even know if the parents knew where they were.
No, they didn't. They relocated them, and a lot of these were owned by Catholic churches. Yo, fast forward to today, where
Whoa,
in Canada and
what?
America,
For
yeah,
real?
fast forward to America and
The
Canada
pedophile
today,
church?
bro. They're digging up the grounds around these churches, and they found 200 unmarked graves of Indian boys and girls. I mean, Native American boys and girls, bro, killed
Oh,
dead
that's
around
right.
these churches, dude.
That's right. That came out this year. Yeah.
That came out this year. So I can understand now.
Oh,
Really quickly in
my,
education
my
reform, we're
heart
going to talk
sinks,
about.
right?
I
Like
know,
my
dude.
heart sinks.
I have to
200, 300 children? Are
at
you kidding me?
one facility, and we're
Dude.
talking
Yeah,
about facilities
exactly.
all over America and Canada, bro.
Well,
And
and,
so,
and bro, and
mhm.
that's one grave.
Oh
There
my
might
god,
be more at
in
that
that
same
area.
facility.
So those parents clearly did not know what was going
Oh,
on with their kids. It's just sickening. So this brings me to CRT, right? It's a hot topic in
and
America. Go
can
ahead.
you say genocide?
Can you say genocide? Can you say the Catholic? I mean,
Can we just
and and
can we
and
say
I'm
the G word? Right? We have
we
a
can.
real problem saying genocide, right?
We
Like
do.
Israel seems to have a fucking lockdown on like suffering, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
yeah.
Holocaust. Like, no, you can only suffer about that. Like, No,
Right. That's the only
that
time
was
we can use
bad.
genocide. That was
That
bad.
was bad.
But
But
six
look at
million,
this.
bro, absolutely. Because
Y'all weren't wiped out.
we're talking about smallpox. We're talking about the boarding schools. We're talking about war. We're talking about Wounded Knee. We're talking about
We're
the Trail
talking
of
about
Tears,
paying for scalps, five
paying for
dollars per scalp.
scalps
In California, they
in
paid $5
California,
per scalp
which was a
into
lot
the
of money back then.
up to the 1900s.
Yep. And so when we're talking about this, guys, it makes me have to bring up CRT. And again, you've heard me constantly talking about things from a kind of an insensitive, unbiased point, but then you'll often hear me talk about it in sense of what it could mean or how it's viewed by poor and common so-called white people of today. And I'll say this with empathy that I can understand how bringing up some of this history can make you feel like, why is my name personally attached to this? Why should I have to suffer for other people's sins or my forefathers' sins? Or I didn't own slaves, I didn't benefit from the system. Why should this have to be taught? Unfortunately, if you really feel you're dissociated from the system of oppression, then you should have no reason for wanting it not to be taught. The only reason you don't want it to be taught is if you have some kind of guilt, which means you have an internal link to this. So search
Right.
yourself.
And
I
if
don't think.
and if it's
Mhm.
just the guilt factor, well, then that's a personal thing that you need to search your soul and get over. But if it's a
Right.
monetary thing, would be the only thing that would make sense. Is if like, no, I'm trying to protect my pocketbook, man. My great
Right.
great grandfather was a slave owner, and I'm rich.
Right. I'm rich, bitch. But the
I'm
reason I bring
rich.
up
Right.
the reason I bring up
Yeah. But I say,
CRT,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. You shoot first, then I'll go
No,
next.
you go. No, you
Well,
go.
the reason I bring up CRT, and we often think about it as black people, right? But I think just like we talked about these American Indian boarding schools that are uncovering hundreds upon hundreds of unmarked graves, I'm sorry to say this, this is American history, people. Um,
Yeah.
the Trail of Tears is American history. The
You can't just wave a
assassination,
flag and only pay attention to certain parts. You
to the
have
good
to
stuff,
embrace what
man.
the whole is. Right?
Exactly.
You
So
have to
again,
look at the whole. And
yep,
we're not saying that this country is evil,
right.
although we
It's got some
definitely are
parts.
not. We're definitely not fucking the fucking saint riding in on the white fucking horse. That
Right.
myth is blown the fuck out the water. We are
Right.
not the police of the world. We're
Say it.
like the Gestapo. We're more like a gangster. We're stirring
Right.
shit up all over the place. We're not helping anywhere. So we need to reel it in and we
Reel
need
it
to
in.
do better.
And put America
Right?
first, which means we need to focus on correcting and
Thank you.
righting the wrongs here. Absolutely. And when we're
Look how
talking
many
about
problems we have in
CRT,
our country. Yeah.
exactly. People who speak against CRT make a good point. They, when it comes to slavery, genocide, racism, and subjugation, they say,
CRT.
well,
What is CRT?
oh, sorry, critical race theory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So people are one of the points they make is, look, this happened all over the world. Why are we focusing on America? Well, because we're
Because we live
Americans
here.
and it's our country and we live here,
Yeah.
and we
Who
can
else
bring up
will?
the other shit in context to let you know that it was part of a wider Western expansion based on manifest destiny doctrine. For sure, we can bring that up, but I say that to say that this shit happened all over
We
the
don't.
world. We're talking about Australia. You look at the Aborigines. You look at Canada. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
look anywhere in the world where there was Native, or Indigenous, or Aborigine people, and the same history exists. So,
Yep.
because it happened in other places, is that a reason to say we shouldn't teach true history? Now, to be fair, I am a teacher, and I don't necessarily support critical race theory as it's presented. Like things like the 1619 project, I think have a heavy emphasis on certain things, where if you listen to the talk that we've been talking about, we're talking about the overall broader ways of which oppression uses to drive people against each other. When you look at the project 1619, it's saying things between the black and white race, this is what happened. And I think that's good if you want to be on a more focused level, but let's bring it back to, again, this global ramification of what oppression did to divide and conquer people, including creating the white and black labels to subjugate and turn people against each other. So
That
I,
narrative, right?
it's that narrative. It's reinforcing narratives. When I say everything me and you have talked about in this talk, I think needs to be taught. Critical race theorists would agree with me that this hidden history, the fucked up events that we brought up that weren't taught in order to whitewash history and the Daughters of Confederacy. Yes, all that stuff needs to
Oh
be
yeah.
brought out. It all needs to be
Oh
brought out. It
yeah.
needs to be true
Why
history.
weren't exactly? Why weren't we? Why weren't we taught about the ancient cities of the world?
Mm.
It's like we were taught this linear history, and
Mm-hmm.
clearly, I think we agree. Like the world's more like an etch a sketch, right? Like we've risen
Yes, it's a
to
great
massive
analogy.
amounts of technology, and then
Yeah,
totally bloop,
yeah.
nothing, and then over and
Nope.
over and over and over and over. Who knows how
Yeah.
many
Who
times, right?
fucking knows, bro?
Who knows? But estimates are that the Sphinx is 50,000 years old, right?
The
So
estimate that you're right that the Sphinx was built when it was facing. It's literally facing the direction that the
the Leo,
constellation of Leo was.
right?
That
Which
would
makes
date it
sense.
right there. It's so fucking old, yo.
It's so obvious. A lion facing towards like
Leo.
and and so what are they? So what are they doing? I think they're saying the next time Leo comes back, there's going to be a fucking
Mm.
cataclysm. Be ready.
And let's just talk about the way that the pyramids of Giza are set up to the belt of Orion and to Sirius. It's like there's
Right.
so much stuff that we didn't know. Like the Sumerians, for example, knew the order of the planets, about the asteroid belt, and about Planet X, which we're just now releasing to the public that we know exists. And
Right.
they knew about the
Nibiru.
precession of the equinox. Yeah, Nibiru. How the fuck does Sumeria, one of the oldest, what we thought was one of the oldest civilizations, know about the precession of the equinox, which takes 2,000 years of constant observation to notice with tools we didn't think they had? How? And just like you
And
said,
they all
etch and sketch.
and they also knew about what is it called? It's a 26,000 year cycle.
Elliptical. Yeah, yeah. Oh, the
What
Kali Yuga.
the what is that? Ah, oh, there's another word. It's on the tip of my tongue. But they knew about that one too.
Yeah, the Great Cycle. I know what you're talking
The
about.
Great Cycle, right? It's on
Hmm.
the Mayan, and the Mayan calendar had
The
that
long
too,
count calendar. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's so
right? The Mayan
and it.
calendar was like 3 circles, right? So you got like your well, bunch of circles, right? So you got like your
Mhm.
daily, weekly, monthly. That's where we got that shit from, day, week, month,
Yep,
and
exactly.
then year, and then beyond that, and then they had the 26,000 years is the great, I guess, the Great Cycle. Yeah,
Right. I wanted to say something else about that, but we're letting these ditties pile up. Let's jump through some of these and then we can get
let's
back
do
in
it.
it. All right, let's go. Liberty Warrior.
Hell yeah, Dave, tell him. Tell him, Dave. I'm right there with you. I know I'm on a fucking list. Come on, you fucks. How many of you can I take with me? Let's
Right.
do it, Dave. Come on.
Some Bill Cooper
Bring
shit.
it! All
Right.
right, we got a soldier with us.
Let's go. Mountain Lee.
In a way, the people. I mean, in a way, do you kind of admire these guys in Afghanistan? You know, the people in the Panjshir Valley who were fighting for their country. You know, fighting against the
Mm.
Taliban, and even the Taliban men who are like, you know, trying to take over. Like they don't like their governments. They're trying to install new. Like they're just
Mm.
resisting against what they think is a corruption and stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not Muslim. I'm not sympathizing with extremism and stuff. I don't like the tactic
Sure.
against civilians, but I do
Sure.
admire that these guys are resisting against the government and managed to win over the Mujahideen
Mm.
and then the Taliban
Mm-hmm.
in Afghanistan. These tribes have managed to beat Britain and Soviet Union and America.
Say it,
And then just recently.
You too, brother.
This is crazy.
bro. You're such a
Yes,
fucking G for even being able to look at it like that. And you're absolutely right. Suicide
yep.
bombing, extremism, we denounce that all around. But for you to really understand
We
how
trained him.
we not only, yep, we trained them, we gave them the guns, and we gave them a reason to fight. Like we're encroaching and taking their natural resources, their oil. Um,
Can we
and
break that down for people real quick?
yeah,
The
you want to go ahead.
the
You're going to go into it.
Mujahideen. So the
Go ahead.
Mujahideen was formed by the CIA and whatever the
Mm-hmm.
military in
Mm-hmm.
general. But Osama bin Laden was on the payroll of the CIA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We formed an army to fight against Russia
Mm-hmm.
because because we wanted Afghanistan, not because Afghanistan was important at that time. Afghanistan didn't have much, but right north of Afghanistan is Turkmenistan.
Mm-hmm.
Turkmenistan has the fifth largest reserve of natural gas in the world and the fourth largest reserve of oil. So we wanted that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, it's never been about Afghanistan, but then they grew a bunch of opium there that worked out, and then they found a bunch of lithium there.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
now they want the lithium. But
Right, right.
yeah,
And when we're talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a CIA M16 uh, joint creation, we've just been
mhm,
involved in their politics for so long. And back in the day, when it came to the United Nations, the reason we said we were doing these things is to prevent the spread of communism. And this is what Dave talks about earlier, which is this world police aspect. We need to make sure that the rest of the world doesn't have a different economic system than us. Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
but
And who
if they
cares, right?
do, well, okay. But if they do, then they'll join the axis of evil and there'll be a nuclear superpower, red sun kind of terrorist state, right?
Right.
Probably
So
not,
I
dude.
remember I remember I remember what I was going to say. So the
Yeah.
Mujahideen
Hmm.
was formed by the CIA, and what they did is they went around the whole Middle East and recruited the most extreme, like Muslim extremists.
Mm,
They went on a recruiting campaign, and they
mm,
formed an army of basically America haters. And
mm,
they've had, like people that hated the West to like a passion, and they got them to fight against Russia. And they trained them,
mm,
and
mm,
they trained
mm,
them in all these terrorist tactics. They armed
mm.
them. They gave them a ton of money, and they, that's where Osama bin Laden came from.
Long line. Absolutely.
Yeah, and a ton of other people. But Osama bin Laden's just a puppet, that they
Hmm.
will wag in front of us. He's just one guy. But
Absolutely.
no, this is a massive operation, and so
For
that's what became the
decades.
Mujahideen.
Hmm.
That's what the Mujahideen, which actually defeated the Soviet army, right?
Right.
And then do you think they just went away? No, and the CIA built tons of tunnels all through the mountains of
Hmm.
Afghanistan for them. And so, do you think they just went away? No. And we left, weapons, bump to bump to bump. And you see the same thing happen in Afghanistan now. We pull out, we leave them the weapons. Like,
Yep.
why would you do
Yep.
that? Why would you do that?
Exactly. And that's Tony
Why would you do
Stark,
that?
right? And that, why would you do that? Just like Tony
Well,
Stark, man, like he felt bad because he saw American soldiers getting killed by weapons that America gave these extremists, his weapons,
right.
and
Yep.
we should feel that same way in the sense that
Totally.
America is the biggest exporters of guns, bombs, and military equipment, not only to places like Israel and other sanctioned states and other United Nations states, but just like the Iran Contra situation, we're funding rebel groups to do our bidding. These are called proxy wars, and we've been
Yeah.
part of so many proxy wars throughout history. So every American soldier that goes out there to defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of justice for our country, to make sure that that we have freedom here and abroad. I think that those individuals should always be commended and respected because they're giving their lives for something bigger than themselves. They're not
That's
always
huge bravery.
right. It's huge
Huge
bravery.
bravery.
They're not
Might be
always right.
misplaced.
It might be
Yeah.
misplaced, and you might be being used as stormtroopers by an empire. But you can never, I'll never hate on an individual soldier. Of course, some
No,
soldiers
hell
that
no.
go too far and abuse of
Hell
power
no.
or do some things like Blackwater troops, the Blackwater
They're held
private
accountable.
police were doing. Hold
Hold.
those guys accountable. But overall,
Fuck yeah.
it's not our men and women of the flag and of the camos
No.
fault.
No.
But
And I would never say that either. You can't hold the
never.
person accountable. It's the system.
It's the system, and it's these big bodies like the Council on Foreign Relations and these other entities that decide what our foreign
Mhm.
policies are going to be, and then use our troops as stormtroopers to fucking enforce this in these hundreds and hundreds of
Exactly.
military bases we have around the world. It's not fair to our
1,000. 1,000.
thousands. It's not
We
fair to
have a
our brothers
thousand.
and sisters, guys. It's not fair, and we got to get a hold of that. But thanks for that comment, and you're absolutely right, Mountain Leaf, for looking at it that way. Is that you know they're trying to protect their land, their resources from who they consider as invaders. And if it was happening to the US, you damn sure that these militias would form up. and the other
That's what I
country
always
who's
say.
in right, this other country
Flip
who
the
is
script.
invading us
You
is
put
saying these
them in their
American
shoes.
extremists are
Right?
are in Texas shooting rocket fire at our invading forces. You know, they paint us as these crazy, you know. So yeah,
Exactly.
great point, man. Really appreciate that.
Yep.
Liberty Warrior.
You know, it's almost easier to name things that the Rothschilds don't own rather than trying to say what they do own.
Right. They don't own me,
Yeah.
damn it.
They don't own us. No, I was just
Right.
talking about a bunch of shit that's named after them. They got like a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
wines, a bunch of different like insects are named after. Like I was watching some Discovery Channel thing, and I'm like, what? It's like a
Oh,
butterfly named after the fucking Rothschilds too.
dude.
Couldn't believe it.
Damn. Right. Let's go, Mountain Lee.
Oh, well, that's funny. I'm Mountain Lee. I'm actually wanted for murder in Montana. This is my fake name. But yeah, I'm actually wanted for murder in Montana. That's why I'm up here. So people all think they're fucking around with a guy and stuff who jokes around. But I'm actually crazy psychopathic murderer.
Stereo,
Right on, brother.
do not track this guy down, Stereo. He's just joking.
Don't do it. Don't
Don't
do
do
it.
it. Don't do it.
He's not the Unabomber. The
No,
Unabomber's already been caught.
he's been caught. Shout out to you,
It was
Mountain Lee.
really him too.
Oh shit. Jeff Wong in the building. Talk to us.
Do you think mission accomplished with Obama, or did he fail?
Well, dude, you did that with your mouth. That was really good. It sounded really good. Okay, so this is just like our conversation. The U.S. school system is broken, but it's really doing exactly what it was designed to do by the elites. So if you thought Obama was going to come in and usher a peace, a bipartisan peace and understanding,
Oh,
prosperity,
hell no.
and that the common man and minorities were going to be treated equal and it was going to heal America and that he was going to bring the troops home in an orderly fashion, then you would
That
say,
kumbaya moment.
right, and that he wouldn't have lobbyists and elitists and banking people in his cabinet, then you would say, "Oh, mission accomplished, mission failed." But
Right.
let's be real with the elite powers and what Obama even said himself, what he really was there to do, which was to restore a sense of confidence and make people of color more engaged and interested in the political system again, to who were not voting almost at all at that time. And then when Obama came, we had this record number of black people voting and Latinos. The other thing was and if you watch that documentary I mentioned, Right America Feeling Wrong, it was to set the stage for this civil war atmosphere of hating each other based on political views and race. Because as
shit.
Obama was running, they were the media and the conglomerates and the narrative creators were already stirring up this conflict. And before Trump was even selected to be the guy who did it, you remember Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin was going to be their woman who was basically running the Trump campaign, right? I mean, running the Trump style of I'm here for the little person and I'm an outsider and these damn Democrats and all this and that. But Sarah Palin,
And
for whatever
spewing hate.
reason, for whatever reason, the Southern strategy didn't work with her. I would have loved to. She was kind of pretty. I'd love to see her up there speaking for 4 years and shit. And
she's not
election
good at
fraud.
it though. She can't speak.
She wasn't good at it, exactly. And Trump just fucking killed it. I'm a huge fan of wrestling, and I know a guy who can play a heel character. Trump is a genius when it comes to playing a heel, bro. He is a fucking genius.
You know what would be awesome is to see Trump like just call like some UFC like side by side with Joe Rogan.
Great. Yeah. Speedy
Wouldn't that be
recovery
awesome?
to Joe Rogan. That would be awesome. Trump headlined WrestleMania against Vince McMahon, and it was so funny.
Have Trump be the color guy.
Yeah, the color commentator, color orange. No, I'm just kidding.
Totally.
I live in a liberal state, of course, California. Some of my students, they hear their parents talking so much shit about Trump that they'll come in saying, "Oh, the orange man, the orange man." And I used to always love to be the guy in between politics all the time. And I'd be like, "Are you making fun of Trump because of the color of his skin? That's not right. We don't do that." And they would be like, but. And I'm like, "No, you're making fun of his skin." I love it. It's true. You are.
Yeah.
All right, let's go, Mountain Lee.
Oh yeah, the Nazis. I mean, it was terrible what happened, but they're like the perfect, because they just documented everything, and just
Right.
like their wonderful suits, that
Oh, their suits,
were
man.
fashionable, and just
So
the
stylish.
red, and just their weird, cultish ways, I mean, yeah, they're just like the perfect supervillains to write about in history, So they'll be wrote about forever, man. You know what I mean? Like in a bunch like Star Wars, the stormtroopers, not based off Nazis, And that shit'll be played and played and played and played again, It's funny though. This is America.
This is America.
America.
Guns in
Fuck
my
yeah.
area.
But you know what we won't talk about? We won't talk
What?
about the fact that Prescott Bush, George Bush
Uh-oh.
Sr.'s dad,
Uh-oh.
was the head of ExxonMobil,
Mm-hmm.
and he was the one basically selling oil to the Nazi war machine against Congress's
Mm-hmm.
will, and basically a war criminal.
Yep, and we're not going to talk
Like
about
if he would
how.
have cut off the oil supply, the Nazi war machine would have come to a screeching halt.
Right. And we're not going to also talk about that a predecessor to the gas used in the gas chambers in Nazi Germany was piloted and based off of technology that we used in the U.S. against Mexicans when we were so-called decontaminating them in chambers because of because of they were dirty and because of sicknesses that they so-called brought, and that those exact gases were modified and used. And we're not going to talk about so-called Zionists. And again, let me just say real quick that I see often a lot of hate pointed towards Jewish people, Jews, right? Jewish people, especially the Ashkenaz European-looking Jews of today. These common Jewish people that escaped Nazi Germany, these common Jewish people that sure um, hunkered down in America, made something of themselves, own a lot of industry, and are good with their money. There's no reason to hate these people because when
No,
you're talking
hell no.
about no, absolutely not. And I hate that their name gets mixed up when you're talking about elite Zionist Jews who are
Zionist is the key
Zionist is
word. Has nothing
completely
to do with
different.
Israeli, right?
No,
Or it
it
has
has
nothing
nothing
to
to
do
do
with
with Israel
Israeli or
or
Jewish.
American Jews. Yeah,
Zionist
exactly.
is the word.
And if you ever really want to
Zionist.
know this, that attaches to the point that the person just spoke before us is that Rothschilds and who are Zionist Jews, I should say, were funding Hitler and the Holocaust. Like you could
Yep.
follow the paper trail; it's there, and there's more of them.
Yep.
Why were Zionists supporting this extermination of Jews? Because they don't identify, they don't care about the Jews, they think they're above the Jews, and it would help usher in their Zionist state of Israel. It was the crisis they needed to have the sympathy and buy-in of, oh, we need a Zionist state, which they wanted from the beginning. So they were willing to sacrifice their own people for that. So please
Mm-hmm.
don't confuse and hate common and everyday Jews with a very specific group of elite Jews who don't even associate themselves with the people that you're giving the flack for. I think that's super important.
Exactly. My nephews are Jewish, and they're cool people.
Yeah, I have quite a few Jewish friends. I'm one of those guys. I have black friends. Listen to me. I got Jewish friends. Let's hit these
Yeah.
news, David. I
That's
just pulled in.
that's not your Jewish friend, David. That's just your friend.
Yo, I was saying the same exact thing to my good buddy. He's a very, very heavy right winger. He's just like me, though, a libertarian. But he very believes in Trump and all the stuff. And I told him, dude, it's great to have hope. It's great to have this and that, to have hope that this could happen. But shouldn't we be real and realize what this still could be? What the government has done so much in the past is lie and do whatever it takes to maintain power or gain more power, and use this all just to play with our heartstrings to make us have feelings like, yes, our government can be saved.
Yes.
It's the way, and give you a false sense of purpose. And I told him, dude, I just believe we should just bring the whole system down and start something different, a new experiment, because apparently this experiment has totally and utterly failed by greed.
Big man
Yep. This car
Sam
is
with the
backfiring.
game. Is that yeah? He's over probably work. He's probably got the hood up working on some shit. Hey, shout out to you,
Mm-hmm.
big man. That was a great comment. I said that to people in my family, and of course, being African American, I got the shit right. They're like, he's a black president, and you're speaking against him, and this and that. Like, I'm like, hey, I'm seeing through the politics, and I'm knowing what this is going to represent. Like, I kind of saw through that with Obama, and the same thing with Trump. But you're absolutely right that I think some black people would disagree with me on this too. But this whole voter rights restriction, this battle to secure voting rights in America and these so-called Republican states that are cracking down on voter rights. I'm not
That's
denying
some
that that's
bullshit.
happening. That is happening, but you gotta how how deep does that rabbit hole go? Is that just really happening? And we need to save the rights, or just like with Obama, when people start to disassociate and say, "Hey, this political system is fucked. We got to find other ways to change this country." Are they then creating a crisis around voting to say, "Oh my God, we have to save voting. We have to save voting because that will make black people reinvest and want to vote. We got to stand up and save that. Our ancestors fought for that, so now we can vote." But you weren't
For
voting
one of these two parties,
for one of these two
right?
parties, exactly. So I think part of that is true, but part of it is just to drum up crisis and interest around that so that black
Totally.
people could flock to voting again. Like,
I think it's I think it's both. I think you nailed it.
mm-hmm,
I mean, we can't have there should be no intimidation factor to keep people from voting, right? Like I've
right,
never been asked to show
right.
my driver's license. I'm a
Mm,
fucking white dude with blonde hair and blue eyes. Nobody's
mm,
ever asked to see my driver's license. I walk
mm-hmm.
in, Dave Smith, you register to vote in advance, so they have your address and
Information,
your
your
name.
address, everything, right?
And so you walk up and you go, Dave Smith, here's my address, bubba da bub, and they go, okay, sign here, go
Mm-hmm,
vote.
mm-hmm,
Never once, dude, have I had to show my driver's license.
mm.
So, and so to have a cop standing out front, well, that's going to scare anybody that's got a warrant or anything like that.
And stop you
Um,
from drinking water or eating snacks in line.
and like, well, let's not even go there, but just to have a cop out front, like, what's the
Yeah,
point? Like, has
yeah,
there ever been crime at a voting place? The only time there's been crime is when an opposing political party has come up and done like a
or
drive-by.
anti-protest or drive. Exactly, exactly.
So,
And real quick, somebody else brought up election fraud, and they said they stole the election. I would just like to say this.
not proven.
Again, again, I think that this is again a lot of these things are pre-scripted to create the discourse. 2020, bro,
Yeah,
was so scripted. I don't think people know how scripted 2020 and henceforth some of
totally.
2021 is. A lot of these things you're hearing about election fraud,
Well,
pandemics, um,
so was 2016, right? Like
yeah. Well, that's what I.
The DNC stole the primary from Bernie Sanders, like right in front of
Right,
us, and gave
right.
it to Hillary, and everybody
Hillary.
just fucking took it.
And people were, especially us being out here in California, I was surprised at how many Democrats were saying, I hate voting for Hillary, but I just don't want Trump in. And that's bad. That's bad when even like even people who believe in the political system, we
Right.
know that, like, and just like Ron Paul before that, he ran Republican. This dude had so many young people behind him, they blackballed
Yeah.
him, and they blackballed Bernie Sanders because
They shut
those
him
guys
down,
may
both of them. Yep.
both of them, those guys may have even still been plants, but the conversation changing kind of things they were talking about, audit the Fed, and just addressing so many things, getting the money out of politics. Even if they were puppets or gatekeepers, we can't even have them. At least give us one of those
No.
guys. Nope, you get the top brand choices. Period. And so my
Yeah.
point on election fraud was, if any Democrat or liberal says that there was no election fraud against Trump or against this, it's a lie because there's always election fraud. Now,
Yeah. The whole thing's a scam.
Was there enough election fraud to change the millions of vote that he lost by? Absolutely not. You're lying to
No.
yourself if you think that they changed the outcome with the votes, but you can't also believe people that say there was no voter fraud. So, because it's
Right.
always a little bit. So, but check this out.
Totally.
It's not a democratic ploy of communism to take over the America, and they're using voter fraud and took advantage of absentee ballots and blah blah blah. It happens on
And it
both
wasn't
sides. Let's
Russia.
not forget about the Florida recount to get George W. Bush in office in his own
Yep.
brother's state of Florida. So
Yeah.
both
Where the
political
Supreme
parties.
Court, our Supreme Court, stepped in
Mm,
and stopped the vote count and gave the election to
mm,
George Bush. Why?
exactly.
Do you remember what they said? They said, well, we wouldn't be able to finish the vote count in time. Like, I
And
don't care what the deadline is. I want the right
exactly.
president.
Exactly.
Count the
So
fucking vote.
count the fucking vote. So again, I say that to say that election fraud is used back and forth. It's a tool. It's not a Democratic thing or a Republican thing. This is two wings of the same bird who are using this mentality for us to say, oh, my guy lost this time, but we're going to vote for this and we're going to win next time. And oh, you guys cheated and we're going to get. So when you look at all these spectator sports and you see that they're ingraining that mentality of my team versus your team, red versus blue, oh, we're going to crush you.
Yep.
They're letting that infiltrate. And again, this plays on, just like Freud was talking about, some of our subconscious centers to make us feel like that is the point here and feel like that's what we're investing in. And
Absolutely.
we're not even really thinking about
Rivalries.
controlling our government. We're stoking rivalries. You're absolutely right.
The Dodgers versus the Giants.
Period. And guess what? They're both
Like back in
owned
the
by the
day,
MLB, bitches. No matter if you
like
buy tickets to, oh, go ahead,
like
make
back
your point.
back in the day and at
Yeah.
Candlestick, when they used to
Oh
play at
man.
Candlestick, like if you wore
Yeah.
a Dodgers hat in there, you risked your ass getting beat.
Bro, same thing in
Like
Oakland. If
it got ugly sometimes.
Yeah, just like Oakland Raiders. If you came wearing a
Same shit.
San Diego Chargers gear, I was at Raiders games where these motherfuckers got beat the fuck up. And
Right.
it's stupid, but when I was young, that was a sense of pride. Like, yeah, we're in the black hole. Don't come over here with that shit. But as an adult, I'm like, bro, how
Yeah.
fucking petty are we?
And it's one thing to yell that, but it's the other thing to be like that fool that's throwing blows. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah,
Come on.
this guy was
We're
getting
the
drinks. They just
we're the
some Raiders
game, man.
fans,
Come on.
and these are die-hard Raiders fans. I mean, this motherfucker had shoulder spikes, the silver skull mask, everything. Slapped the
Oh
drink out his
Jesus.
hand, like get the fuck out of here. I'm like, oh shit, it's going down. All
Whoa.
right, Liberty Warrior.
You know, to be very, very honest, I think the actual last president, people all say it's Abraham Lincoln that stood for the people. I honestly think it was Andrew Jackson that was the last person that stood for the people. I mean, if you think about it, when he recruited an army to go south in New Orleans back in 1812, he gathered everyone he could. He didn't care what race, what religion, what you are. You're fighting because we have a home. We have a home, and we want to keep these people out. But mind me, I'm smoking. When he became president, he also fought against the banks and fighting to keep them in their greedy ways out, like so the Rothschilds and such like that. I can't remember the whole thing. I remember there was some articles about it. I remember. Sorry.
I somewhat agree, but again,
He tried to go against the central banks, and all of a sudden he done got shot.
yeah, I somewhat agree with that. But again, when you're trying to win a war, you're going to recruit everybody. You're going to recruit all races because you need the numbers. And unfortunately, in those times, a lot of people of color, especially black people, were put on the front lines almost as cannon fodder.
It's
But
what you
let's
do
not.
after the war.
It's
The
what you
judge,
do.
right?
That's the judge. And let's not forget, he is the president of the Trail of Tears. So you can say he's for the people, but unfortunately, and I love talking about America altogether as one. But when you say he's the president of the people, which people? For fuck sure, not the Native Americans. For fuck sure.
There you go.
but great point. Great point. Let's go. Jeff Wong.
I was just at that residential school a couple weeks ago, paying my respects and saying some prayers for the native people there. It's intense.
Right on, man.
Props to you, bro.
That's awesome.
Those spaces just hold such energy, you know? Like,
oh man, they need a lot of prayers.
A lot of prayers.
A lot of whatever.
And it's on a
Good
church
thoughts,
ground.
prayers, whatever you call it.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great talk. I do have to. I'm gonna go to sleep pretty soon because I got to get up and teach them cheering in the morning. But I'd love to.
This has been great.
Absolutely, dude.
Let's do it again. Let's wrap it up.
Schedule it up. Yeah, let's wrap it up. So I'll do my little outro, my little 2 minutes, and then and then let's just do our little plugs. Real quick, shout out to all the listeners, bro. Shout out to Lil Dicks Matter, Evolve, Gemini Twix GK27, Royalty Inside My
Much
DNA.
love.
What's up, Royalty? Nathan and May the Poet. May the Poet.
Much love, everybody.
I was saying that wrong this whole time. I got you, May. May the Poet.
Oh, May the Poet. What's going on?
Yeah. Dope. Thanks for everybody who dropped in and dropped some comments. Real quick, I'll sum it up by saying that we talked about the education system, the corporatocracy, or plutocracy, and how these two systems use each other to produce people who are easily divided and conquered, people who are pitted against each other in systems of government, and in religious centers. When we talked about some of the 13 families and or organizations that have been doing this, we understand that it's not evil Democrats or evil Republicans, because we know that before this country was founded in Europe, in Rome, with the royal families, when we talk about this political system being continued, and it's not all one factor, it's not one force, it's not some utopia where conspiracies just work together perfectly and they all get along. These are vying power groups who are trying to take control and, of course, run the destiny in the age of Pisces that was of establishing their one world government and or having as much control or rule over people, politics, land, labor, and capital as possible. It's not a conspiracy theory. So we've been talking about that and how we are disrupting the predictable patterns with critical thinking, and how we can better take care of these kids, the ones both that are going missing and the ones that are falling by the wayside of attrition in our public school system. I really appreciate y'all listening in, going down some of these rabbit holes and chiming in with us. And please listen to this talk in its entirety if you missed some of the things we said in the beginning. I'm Freedom Rain, destroyer of narratives. Really enjoyed this time with Dave Smith. And another thing, what you got to say?
Oh my God, Freedom, this has been amazing. Mind-blowing talk.
Absolutely.
You wrapped it pretty well. This has been basically kind of my whole thing is to enlighten the 99% as to the narrative of how the 1% is the marionette, right? Controlling the puppets, pitting the puppets against each other, causing tension, right? This whole controversy of which bathroom can you use? Well, that's just a dividing line. Like, which sport team do you vote for or do you root for? That's a dividing line. There's all these little dividing lines. Most of them we're not aware of, we don't see, but they're everywhere, right? And then you have the big ones, race, and it's just hammered in our face.
Right.
And what we really should be looking at is classism. Who benefits from this tension? All right. The people in control. And we were talking about, the 13 families, quote unquote, the Rothschilds and some of the roots that affect everything. And then we were naming some documentaries like Plutocracy, Divide and Rule is a great documentary that talks about how the coal companies started public education basically and printed the textbook, so you only learned what the coal company wanted you to learn. And not a whole lot has changed really,
right
in regard to textbooks.
Can you mention that the documentary you mentioned about PG&E and Power Fuel, what was it?
Fire, Power, Money is a great documentary. I think they're up to it's an 11-part series done by Channel 10 ABC News out of Sacramento, California. Fantastic. And they're breaking it down. Yeah. Fire, Power, Money. And it's on YouTube.
And I also mentioned Right America Feeling Wrong. Even though this documentary was done in kind of a liberal viewpoint, they're interviewing people on the ground, and it just encapsulates the laying the groundwork for the racial tensions that we would have in 2020, using Obama's presidency as a catalyst before he was elected. And it just will kind of point you out to a lot of the narratives that happened before Trump was in. People say Trump ushered in this era of hate and this and that. Watch that documentary. Just check it out and see how the groundwork was being laid for that.
Trump surfed in on a wave that was already created.
Exactly. We got one more ditty in the chamber. We're gonna hit that. If anybody else wants to chime in before we say our plugs and bounce up out of here and schedule our next show, please go ahead and leave a message. We really appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Let's
Much
get
love, everybody.
May.
I was sleeping and I heard my name.
And you woke up?
It's okay. I gotta get up in an hour and no, it's 10:57 here, 11:12. Oh, about 2 hours and 9 minutes. I don't want to get up. But anyway, have a good night, gentlemen. Yeah, I wasn't listening. Denise was actually, but yeah, awake. So my rib cage hurts. Anyway, I'm going back to sleep. You guys have a good night.
You too. Good night. I
May
wake
just
up with
had
my.
surgery recently.
Oh, okay. I was about to
So
say
I hope
when
you're
I
doing
sleep
all
on.
right, May.
Yeah, shout out to you. Happy healing. And it would be cool if, because I've had dreams where I was listening to music and the music would pop into my dream and be on and make it some crazy shit. So it'd be crazy if we were talking while you were sleeping and you were visualizing all the stuff we're saying and you like see Tesla in his laboratory working on shit and JP Morgan kicking on his door with his cane like, you better give me fucking meters and all this crazy shit. Like, shout out to you, May the
Yeah,
Poet.
because we've covered some ground. Dude, we
Right.
got Big Worm in the house.
Big Worm!
Hey, yo, what up? It's your boy Wormillion in the building.
What up,
Cracking
Worm?
to my guy Dave Smith, aka and another thing. And what's up, Freedom Rain?
What's up, man?
Yeah. Oh, Freedom Reigns. Hey, yeah, I remember you from back in the day with what were their names?
Oh yeah.
Smokey or something, or
Yeah.
what was that guy's name?
I think you're right.
Yeah, no, I can't remember it. But he was
And
exactly
Bell.
like me in a lot of ways. And then he had the Bell and something. Bell
Yeah.
and Fucktard. Can't remember. Anyways, should be a good show.
Yeah, Worm. I remember Worm came in dropping all kind of gems and bombs, and then just like me, he would say things specifically to get the conversation and even debates going. And it was healthy debates. It was challenging. It was
He's
awesome.
good, yeah.
Love
He's
him
awesome.
when he does that shit.
Yeah,
Worm.
he's awesome.
Congratulations! I heard you got nominated and or won for Conspiracy Guy of Stereo. And I think this talk, if you would have came in earlier, you would have probably been dropping bombs on this shit because Dave was going in, I was going in. So if you ever have time, listen to this shit in retrospect, and we're definitely gonna do another show. Maybe you want to hop on, but yeah, man, we got deep into it, and I'm sure you have stuff to add.
And let me give a little plug. So
Yeah.
Worm and I are doing a show on 9/11 about 9/11.
Ooh.
And the show starts at 11:11 on 9/11
Ooh, you guys are crazy.
about 9/11.
Oh shit!
Yeah, baby. And we're gonna be tearing it up. We're gonna be dropping hella bombs. It's gonna be
I'm there. I'm there. And remember our shirts. Remember the shirt we talked about on the last panel? It's instead of remember 9/11, it says remember Tower 7. Remember WT7. WCT7.
Yep.
Oh, you weren't done plugging. You were gonna say one more thing.
No, that was it.
For sure, man.
September 11th with the Big Worm.
Drop through on that. I'm definitely there. I'm gonna be all up in that thing, listening. This talk with Dave, we both had notepads. We had a lot of good shit. I'm gonna bring my notepad to there. Really appreciate y'all. And again, we talked about CIA and data and speech recognition, monitoring people. And despite that, Stereo is probably in its clause required to turn certain information over to the CIA. I still want to shout out Stereo for letting people have these conversations, not necessarily shutting down and banning them at a high level, and just letting people have these conversations and build. So shout out to Stereo, which is a platform that came around about the time where America was most divided last year and gave people a chance to talk face to face without the corporate news media riling people up against each other. So shout out to the conversations we've had on here.
Absolutely. And I want to give a little plug. So shout out to Stereo. Amen. Also, shout out to Anchor, which is where I post these podcasts, and then Anchor goes out to like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Like I'm on I'm in like 20 different countries now. So thank you, Stereo. Thank you, Anchor.
Yes.
We're talking to the world right now.
Exactly, and that's how you defeat conglomerate news media. Is you put you let people be their own researchers, let people sift through information. You don't shut people down and call shit dangerous misinformation unless you've been cultivating a society full of idiots who believe whatever you want them to, and then you get mad when they look into other sources that aren't your official sources. So we want critical thinkers that can shoot down and sift through information and come to their own conclusions. And thankfully, we have a voice and an outlet for that. And I'm glad Dave is getting his voice out there, and that I'm able to also do talks. Search through our talk history on here. Any topics interest you. Also look at my first show, Is Stereo a Trap, where we kind of dived on that specifically. We got Worm in the building before we jump off, so let's get it.
Yeah, WTC7.
Right.
I do not remember that. Was that building that briefly caught on fire and then suddenly collapsed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hella far away from the other buildings.
I heard rumors that it contained the CIA's records or some shit. Yeah, that's a bad conspiracy, because I don't have anything really to back that up. I think it's just rumor. Oh, WTC 7.
Yep. Weirdest shit ever. It was far away from the buildings. The other got hit, and that one just decided to collapse because it had the same name, I guess. And I also
collapsed, like almost free fall the same speed as a tennis ball.
Right into a neat little pile. Exactly.
Yep.
And shout out to you saying I heard a rumor, but I didn't research it myself and don't know if it's true. I think that us being able to always say that as we look in is just proving that we are like individual journalists searching through shit. And when you don't know, just say you don't fucking know, bro. Like, we don't have to lie.
Exactly.
So I appreciate you did that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dave, I was just listening today to an episode in which you and I are just improvising, just, I don't know, but it was hella fun. I got to finish listening to it, actually. Got about halfway through.
Hilarious, huh?
But shout out to you. It sounds really professional. I like the intro. I like the music. It's good stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, you know what I'd like to see a lot more from people is being okay with something not having a conclusion.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about rabbit holes. I'm just talking about inconclusive. You know, what we have here does not prove anything or refute anything. Therefore, we're not going to draw any conclusions.
Right.
At least not until we get some better evidence. But people have convictions, and they're based on, I don't even know, whim, fantasy, rumor,
ego. And just
I agree completely. Like, I like to ask questions. I'm not telling people what to think. My line is, I like to say, I'm not telling people what to think. I'm telling people to think.
Period. And I think Neil deGrasse Tyson has a great quote. It might be a quote of someone else's, but he said, there are some times when one might just have to be content with the questions themselves. And I think that's so important, because when you have an invariable solution and you look at a situation from all angles and you just answer and ask so many questions, sometimes that does the work for you. Like, for example, if you look in a dark cave and say, hey, there could be a predator, it could be a pitfall, you will go in there much more prepared for everything than if you don't ask any questions. You don't have to have answers. You won't know till you get in there, but at least you'll be prepared and able to react to shit. So that's a great point. I'm so glad you said that.
And how is any crime solved? Through deduction, right?
Exactly.
Deduction, Watson.
Deduction, my boy. And you can't go into shit with, like, just like Worm was saying, if you have your ego and personal identity attached to outcomes, you're not going to be able to unbiasedly look at information and come to true conclusions. When somebody challenges your thought belief, which may be a question you should ask yourself, you might get butthurt and be completely turned off from listening to it and be wanting to fight because you have a vested interest in that. Don't do that. Just see where the questions and the data takes you, learn what you can, and just be aware of other shit. Keep it in mind for a later time.
And if something ruffles your feathers, ask yourself why.
There you go.
Why? Why am I sensitive about that?
Right? 2020 was the best year to have that skill. Motherfuckers was getting booty tickled off everything.
Oh my god. Right?
But anyway,
Triggered.
Triggered. Hold on, Worm said it. Now I want to do it too. Hold on. We're gonna do some fucking outro music in this motherfucker. But for real though,
Oh, I got one.
shout out.
I got
Oh,
one
you got
right
one?
here for you.
Here, let me cancel this.
Oh, I like yours.
Get in there.
I like yours better.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I love deductive reasoning. I love what you just said, Dave Smith. I do want to admit that I have a newfound appreciation for inductive reasoning, which I didn't think I would until I came to understand that that's where hunches, come from. So you got a hunch, and then you set up your experiments, and you try to prove your hunches. I think that's the difference between really good detectives or really good scientists or inventors, artists. Innovation has to come from like this wild kind of intuitive, I don't know, just idea springs forth, and if you learn to trust your gut, then maybe you can use them both together, because that's the key: inductive plus deductive.
Yep.
That's the key. Yin and yang, right? Why would you only use half of your potential power? Right?
Say it. It's like
right.
not using your queen on the chessboard. Why would you do that?
Right. You got to embrace your masculine and feminine, your yin and your yang, your warm and your cold,
Yep. Absolutely. So
the
again,
light wouldn't be anything without the dark. All those parables.
All those good parables. Right. So shout out again for everybody who joined us using deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning, examining the history of educational systems, political systems, and also financial and governmental systems, military operations, to just really look at a fact-based history of what we've been through, and kind of using that as a marker to see what we can potentially go through, breaking those predictable patterns and being able to throw them off by using critical thinking, which is something they don't want us doing, having conversations that might seem difficult to get to the truth, and like we just said, sometimes being okay with it just being questions and not having an answer. So shout out to everybody who went down that rabbit hole with us.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, and we got another message here. Look at that.
Hit it, and then I'll let you close it out.
I'm getting the feeling you guys are about to be out. My bad, I meant to be here earlier.
You're good.
I will check this out later. And shout outs to both of you for doing a topic that is not being talked about right now, but is still super important. Always will be important. Can't put students first if you put teachers last.
Oh, nice.
That's true. That's true. Why do we pay basketball players what they get, and teachers get what they get?
Right. Actors and entertainers. We want to distract people from the real shit and not teach them the real shit.
That's it. And another thing, we're not telling you what to think. We're just telling you to think.
That's right. And we're giving you freedom and individual thoughts from all them isms and all those other things that try to hijack your narrative. We really appreciate y'all going there with us. We'll see y'all on the
isms and the schisms and the in-betwisms.
Woo! Things in betwixt. We about this G thing.
Much love.
All right, peace, y'all. Thanks for sliding through.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Bunch of fucking weirdos. Anybody not a weirdo? Alright, you're weirdos. I don't really care. Just blowing.